Hello, and welcome to Sobercast, where we provide AA speaker meetings and workshops in podcast format. We're an ad-free podcast, and if you enjoy listening, please help us be self-supporting by visiting Sobercast.com, look for the donate link, and drop $1 or $2 into our virtual basket. We hope you enjoy the podcast. Have a great day.
Hi, everybody. My name is Billie S, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm real excited to be here today. I want to thank Harry and Cindy and the committee for allowing me to get this great pleasure and come here. I have to tell you that last night when they announced that Billie S from Pasadena was going to be the spiritual speaker, I got real scared. And people said to me, well, you know, it's about time you get over that scared. Are you still scared? And this is the 5th one of these deals that I've done, and I didn't get over the scaredness yet. So I don't know if I'm gonna. I don't know if I'm ever gonna get over the scaredness. I like to start my talks by telling you about how I feel, because for so long I didn't know anything about how I feel. And I was talking to Milt on Friday night, and he was talking to me about name the feelings. Most of the time it's like 2 days before I can name the feelings. 2 days later I know what the feeling is, but when I'm in it, it's real hard. So the more I practice when I share, telling my feelings, the more I get to know what they are. And what I'm really realizing is that most of my recovery today is about feelings. And it's about putting adequate behavior with those feelings. Because for so long, when I got here, if you asked me about feelings, I would tell you about my headache, my toe ache, my backache. I had absolutely no idea about feelings. Almost my whole life, what I did with feelings is I just pulled the shade right down on the feelings. Feelings that came from everywhere, feelings that came from nowhere, feelings that I didn't know what they were, and I didn't know how to cope with them. And what I begin to know right now today, I'm learning a whole lot of things about feelings. And what I'm learning to know today is life is feelings, and I am feelings. And I can't heal anything that I can't feel. And it seems like everything I do in life is to get the feeling. Everything I do is for feelings. So the more I can identify those feelings and the more I can put adequate behavior. See, I didn't know how to put adequate behavior for so much of my life. People said about me, she just doesn't act right. Well, you know, how can you act right when you don't identify feelings? The other thing, I came here to Alcoholics Anonymous and I was told to live in the now. It's very difficult to live in the now when I can't identify feelings. And it's taken me a long, long time to do that. I was 10 years in August, and I didn't even start identifying feelings until a couple of years ago. And where I started identifying feelings is by sitting in participation meetings and listening to your feelings. And when I could listen to your feelings from those feelings, then I slowly started identifying my feelings. And the other thing is, you know, I do medical sales and I have to drive around. Sometimes I have to stop the car and say, how do you feel, Billie? Because I don't know how to get the feelings from here to here so that I can have a choice in life. I never had any choices in life. What happened is I would just react to whatever came along. I just was out there reacting. Because I didn't know how to identify those feelings, because I pulled the shade down on them, I had to drink through them, and I had to stuff them right down. And what I know today is feelings will lie to me. I can wake up in the morning and be in the shower and think, Larry, my boyfriend over here is screwing around on me. And you know, I know that's not true. But when I can identify the feelings, then I get the choice whether I want to change the feelings or not. And the other thing I'm finding out, feelings just are. You know, society and I grew up with the fact that I shouldn't have anger, that I shouldn't hate my mother, that all these feelings that were right feelings and wrong feelings. And today I find out that feelings just are. Feelings are okay. I think it was Thursday night. I had been gone for 2 days, and I was going out to talk at a meeting, and I had about 1 hour, and I hadn't seen Larry for a couple of days, and I got my feelings really hurt because he got on the phone and started talking to somebody. And I wanted to be talking to him, so I snitted out of the door, and he came running after, and he said, "Are you mad?" And I said, well, I couldn't say I was mad, of course, because I didn't know that yet, but I said, "Well, I just feel discounted." And he said, "Well, I have things to do." And I got to say to him, "Well, it's okay. It's okay if I feel discounted. It's okay if you want to have things to do." And we get to have a relationship like that today, where it's okay for us to be different. It's okay for us to have our feelings. I am the daughter of an alcoholic, the wife of 2 alcoholics, an alcoholic myself, and I have 5 drug-addicted or alcoholic children. And I have an 18-year-old granddaughter that's out there. She's been in about 3 recovery homes, and she comes in and out, and she can't even get this deal yet. And I talk a little bit about the family disease of alcoholism because that's what my life is. And God, it doesn't tell you about all my aunts and my uncles. And when they came out with that deal about the genetic things of alcoholism, I could have told them that a long, long time ago. If you don't relate to the family disease of alcoholism, and if your family isn't riddled with it, I hope that you will listen for the feelings and listen for the recovery. I was the oldest of 4 children. My father was a periodic alcoholic, and my mother was very, very ill. And I was like the top sergeant. I bossed everybody around. I made sure that the little kids had the right color socks on. They had their lunch money. They went to school on time. And our house was one of those typical alcoholic families that was full of chaos, struggle, drama, fights, brawls, and all the nightmares that go along with the disease of alcoholism. And we never had any consistency in our house. Never, ever knew what was going to be happening. One day I came home from school, and my father was passed out in the front yard. And I went over. I was always real ashamed and real embarrassed. So I didn't want anybody on the outside to be seeing what was going on. So I ran over there, and I shook him, and I shook him. I tried to wake him up, and he wouldn't wake up. So I went in the house. Pretty soon it began raining real, real hard. And I gathered up my mother, who was ill, and my 4 little sisters, and we went out there, and we drugged, and we pulled, and we shoved him in the warshed. And we covered him up and went in the house. And the incredible part of that story to me today is that nobody said one single word about it. Never talked to our mother about Daddy's alcoholism. We never talked to each other about it. And we sure didn't talk to our teachers, because that would have been disloyal. And we loved our father. I lived this life that was full of broken promises and cover-ups. Some of the broken promises, you can have a new pair of shoes next payday. And next payday came around, and my father would be a drunk. And some of the cover-ups, my father isn't home, or my father's too sick. He couldn't say he was drunk in the back room. And that he couldn't go to work because he didn't want to tell people that, see. And I guess the biggest broken promise of all was, I'll never touch another drop to drink. I'll never drink again. Over and over and over again, he promised us that. And over he got drunk. And I didn't understand. I didn't understand it till many, many, many years later, when I used to get these horrible, terrible, bad hangovers. I would be so hungover, my eyes would be just swollen, completely shut. I'd be so sick. And I would wake up in the morning, promise myself, I'm never, ever going to touch it again. I'm never going to drink again. Until about 4 o'clock that very same day, the gnawing had come right down in the pit of my stomach, and God, I'd be drunk all over again. And I'd be out there, I couldn't remember who I was with the night before, what I did, where my car was. And it would be over and over, no self-esteem, and over again I do that. And now today I know that I'm not responsible for my alcoholism, but I am responsible for my recovery. I went to my first Alcoholics Anonymous meeting when I was 13 years old. Chuck C. was the speaker. My father said he could relate to that man because he was a periodic like he was. I went to that meeting and I got my first description of an alcoholic. An alcoholic is one. He just takes one little teaspoon of alcohol into his system and he has to get drunk. Well, you see, that was the description of my father's alcoholism because he was a periodic. Since I've come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I know that it's not how long you drink. It's not what you drink. It's not when you drink it. It's not how old you are. It's not how much you drink. The bottom line is if you have to continue drinking and it causes problems in any area of your life. My father stayed in that meeting for 1 year. And at 1 year, they gave him this little Serenity plaque. And I mean, I've been dragging that thing around for years and pounding it on my wall because it's a reminder to me that I don't ever have one drink left. Because after 1 year, he decided maybe he wasn't a real alcoholic. And he decided that he'd go out and try to do some more drinking. And over the next 10 years, he was always going to come back to Alcoholics Anonymous. He was always going to get his life together. And he was always going to do this thing. Sometimes he'd get 6 months. Sometimes he'd get 6 weeks. But he never really made it back here. And after about 10 years, he started talking about dying because he had to drink every single solitary day. He had to have those drinks. And my father became a hallucinating, insane drunk that had to drink every day. And it took a long, long, long time with the funny little animals and the DTs, and I was a nurse by then, and I was giving him tomato juice. It took a long time for him to wake up one morning to finally be free from this horrible disease. And you know that I stand here today because of watching that and nursing him back together. When I was 14 years old, I became pregnant, my mother died, and I got married, all in that order. I married a guy who was not an alcoholic, and he just loved the women. Neither one of us knew how to make a commitment. By the time I was 20 years old, I was 8 months pregnant with my 4th child, and he ran off with another woman. And as I look back on it now, I told you about all that chaos and all that stuff, but as I look back on it now, I have to look at the good part of that life. You see, I lived in all that chaos, but I also learned how to survive. By pulling the shade down on all those feelings, by not trusting enough to share all that stuff, by denying all that stuff, I became a survivor. And I learned how to just adjust to whatever was going on. And I learned that I better take care of me because nobody else was going to take care of me. So I needed to take care of me. So I learned a lot of good things that really helped me with those 4 little babies and being 20 years old. And I don't know, we survived it some way. I married another guy and we moved down to Indio, and this guy drank beer and a lot of it. And whenever I drank, I thought that you drink to black out and to hide all this pain. So most all the time, I didn't drink very much, but whatever I did, I drank until I blacked out. One night I got in a fight with this guy, and I went for a walk, and I blacked out. The police picked me up. I'm 23 years old. The police picked me up, threw me in jail, and the next morning I got bailed out of jail. Next morning I had to go to court, and the judge said, Billie Jean Swanson, and he pounds that gavel down, and he fined me $25 for drunk walking. And I was mortified, and I was embarrassed, and I was ashamed. I was so ashamed. See, I never wanted to be an alcoholic like my father was. Never. So I went home and I decided that what I'm going to do is I'm not ever going to drink again, and then I won't be an alcoholic. And so for the next 13 years, I didn't have anything to drink. What I also decided was I didn't want to be an alcoholic, and I sure didn't want to be married to one. So I became totally obsessed with my husband's bottle. I begged, I pleaded, I threw the booze down the sink. I had another child because I thought maybe if he had his own kid, that would do it. I did everything I could to get him to stop his drinking. I became the little angel, and I became the little saint. And he was the bad guy, and I became the martyr and the victim. Poor Billy, married to this old drunk with 5 kids. Poor me, you know. That was the real story of my life. And it's real hard for me to tell you about my feelings. Because I told you almost my whole life I just pulled that shade down. I heard a description in Alcoholics Anonymous that talks about an alcoholic, a description of an alcoholic. An alcoholic is one with a great thirst for wholeness. And that was me. I was always searching for something, looking for something to fill up the empty, lonely, needy, so very, very unworthiness places way down in here. I was always looking for something. And what I decided to do is maybe if I found a God. Well, you know, I went to 3 of the major religions to find this God because I don't do anything just a little bit. And I got baptized in 3 of the major religions. And what I found out is I had to measure up, found a God that I had to be good enough for. One of those 100% perfect gods that I had to be 100% perfect for. And I had to quit smoking and I had to quit drinking, and you know what? I couldn't do that. And I couldn't quit smoking and I couldn't quit drinking. It just didn't work for me. And I found a God that I had to measure up to and a God that I had to be good enough for. And I know there's a different God now today. But that's what I found at that time. In the meantime, my children are growing up. And my children are growing up crooked just like I did. See, I didn't know how to be a mother any more than my mother knew how to be a mother. Or than my children know how to be a mother. Because we have all these generations of this stuff. And my children are growing up crooked and they're doing their drugs and they're doing their pregnancies and they're doing all their stuff. And my husband's passed out in the back room and I haven't had a drink for 13 years. And I feel this empty, lonely, needy, so godly, so unworthy places. And I remember walking down the stairs and getting under the seat of his car and getting out his bottle of vodka and drinking the whole thing. And of course the paramedics came because I got so drunk. And I took it because I had taken this bottle of Darvon. And the paramedics came, they took me to Parkside West, that's the psych ward in Covina. And I stayed there for 3 months in a locked ward. And everybody thought I was crazy because I hadn't been drinking all those years. And I thought I was crazy too. And my insurance finally ran out of there and I got out of that hospital. And I got rid of that husband. I mean, I left that husband because it was all his fault. Everything was his fault, and I was sure that when I got rid of him, everything was going to be okay. So I moved into this apartment, and I'm living in this apartment, and since I've come to Alcoholics Anonymous, I know that you can wake up in the morning and that your whole life can be totally different. On this morning, I woke up, you know, this was the worst day of my entire life. And having gone through this day, I know that I can go through any day or anything the rest of my life. Because there was a policeman at my door and he told me that my 20-year-old son Bobby had been murdered, had been stabbed to death. And see, almost my whole life, I live in denial. Denial is ya land. Yeah, it's going to get better. Yeah, it's going to get better. No, it never happened. I lived in this denial and I knew that it wasn't going to be him. I knew that kid was going to walk in the door any minute. I did what a mother does to bury her son. I went up to Forest Lawn. I made the arrangements. And on the 3rd day, the coroner had his body because it was over a holiday. And on the 3rd day, I went up there, and I looked, and oh my God, it was him. And I cursed God. I said, God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you done this to me? Why have you taken the most precious thing in my whole life, in my whole world, and that's my child? And I cursed God, and if anybody, not only did I have that emotional pain, if anybody talked to me about it, I would turn my back about God. And I got this pain right here in my heart like a knife was twisting and turning and twisting and turning Just like instead of him, they knifed me, and it stayed there a long, long time. And I couldn't pull the shade down on all the feelings of anger and rage and guilt. And so what happened was I started drinking every single solitary day, still trying to look good on the outside and just nuts on the inside, just crazy on the inside. About that time, I got picked up on a 502, and I got thrown in the jail. And because I was drinking so much. And I remember I had called my current boyfriend to come and get me, and he wouldn't come and get me. And I remember there was a tall, beautiful woman, and she was standing over in the corner. She was laughing at me. She said, you give it away for free, and your boyfriend won't even come and get you. And I charge plenty, and my pimp's coming to get me. And her pimp did come and get her. And I stayed in the jail all night, and I rode one of those green wire buses to court the next day, and I rushed. I went before that judge, and this time I rationalized it, and I minimized it. Anybody with all my problems, wouldn't they do the same thing? So I got out of that deal. And I decided, well, the God thing didn't work, and I'm living in this apartment, and what do I need now? But I need to have a man. And I didn't do that just a little bit either, finding a man. I got love and sex all mixed up. I came here to this program, and I totally empty, broken-hearted. One of the biggest things is I did not know how to do relationships. For a long time, I have 100 friends out there. But if anybody starts to get close to me, I get real scared. And I push them away, or I do something to get them away, because I don't know how to have relationships. And here I was a couple of years ago, and I was like about 8 years sober, and I was deciding that, I don't even need a relationship. I had had so many bad relationships in my life, I decided I didn't need one. That I'd be okay by myself. And I got to be an okay by myself. And I got to loving Billy and taking care of Billy. And then one night I read in the 12 and 12 at our 12-step book, at our 12-step study, that every person has a compelling desire for a spiritual, mental, and physical relationship with another person. And then it said, God fashioned us that way. So, wow. So then I met Larry about that time. And we both agreed that we wanted to have an intimate, close relationship. Neither one of us had ever had one. So we want to really try this. And I tell you, it's been a hard journey. It's been an incredible journey. It's been wonderful to have a very best friend, to have somebody that supports me and is in my corner and shares everything with me. It's been wonderful, but we've done some of the things. And one of the things I didn't tell you about feelings that was so awesome is to tell the truth about those feelings in love. Telling the truth about those feelings has been just awesome. I don't want to tell you the truth about my feelings because I might hurt your feelings. Or you might not like me. Or you might not do what I want you to do. So I don't want to tell you the truth about my feelings. But now that I know that I tell the truth in love about my feelings, you know what happens is my relationship gets better, my work gets better, all kinds of things. So that's one of the things that Larry and I do is we tell the truth about our feelings. Is that okay? Tell the truth about our feelings. Oh, it's better. Okay, good. Yeah, it was hard for me too because it was coming right back at me. Anyway, so we have these deals that we made. One of the things that we did is we decided to have a 30-day clause. We're both alcoholics. And the first thing we do, we get in a fight, we want to cut and run. See? But what we've decided to do is just to stay for 30 days. So often I would get in this fight and I would want to cut and run, and the next morning I'd wake up, I'd want to get back. It was too late. So now we have this 30-day clause, and we also have a commitment. And the commitment isn't to each other, the commitment is to ourselves. Because we want to have this intimate relationship. For so many years, I said about making a commitment, sure. But I was always looking out the side because I knew that this one wasn't going to work. And I was looking for the one that was going to come next, the good one that's going to come next. So, and the other thing that we do is we allow each other to be different. We allow each other to be individuals. The way I like to explain it is that it's like you have two pillars that are out here holding up one roof. And these two pillars get to have their own life, they get to be different, and they get to have their own ideas. And you put these two pillars over here together like this, and you know what happens? The roof starts rocking like this. But you keep those pillars out here when two individuals, they have a solid foundation to build this relationship on. And the other thing is we have just a lot of fun. We both do our talks in AA, and we just have lots of fun in Alcoholics Anonymous and lots of joy because we didn't get sober for anything but to have fun and to enjoy our lives. So, I don't know where I am right now with my story because those relationships are still doing it to me. Anyway, so I got out of jail and I'm living in this apartment and I'm seeing all these guys and I met this guy. Yeah, that's what happened. I got rid of that. Oh, I know what happened is I got rid of that guy that wouldn't come and get me out of jail. I got rid of that guy, and then another guy, and he told me he was an alcoholic, and he hadn't had a drink in 8 years, and he took Antabuse. He didn't come to AA, he took Antabuse. And so he didn't like my drinking much, but he put up with it. And I thought, geez, it would really be nice, it would be super if I had somebody to drink with. And when I was a little girl, I was Daddy's little darling when he was drinking. And one night I came home from a sales meeting and he met me at the door with a Manhattan and I was in my glory for about 2 days or maybe 3 days. This guy was a gentle, soft-spoken pediatrician, baby doctor, and I need to tell you, after a couple of days of drinking, he was a raving, raging maniac that took his clothes off in public. It was unbelievable what he did. It was unbelievable. So it only took about 2 weeks, and we had to take him down and put him in a care unit. And he went to the care unit, and the first Saturday night I went down to the hospital and I got all these guys, and I took them down to this Lark Ellen meeting, this meeting in West Covina, and it's a big speaker meeting, and I took them back to the hospital, and I went home and I looked up in the liquor cabinet and I saw that booze, and I said, now he is an alcoholic, and we're going to have to throw all this booze away, so I better drink it, and I tried. I tried to drink it all, and my daughter came home at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm trying to kill myself like I always do when I'm drunk. She took me down to the care unit and dumped me in the care unit. And that daughter dumped me in the care unit because she went through most of my alcoholism. She dumped me in that care unit. She really never had anything at all to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. She had a lot of resentments and a lot of stuff going on with me. And I had made my amends to her, but I didn't think she heard them. She wouldn't have anything to do about Alcoholics Anonymous, and last August was my 10th birthday, and I gave myself this little birthday party, and I almost didn't invite her at the last minute, because she never had anything to do with anything. And at the last minute, I sent her an invitation. And she came and she brought me a card that said, I'm proud to be your daughter. And she went to the meeting that I was sharing at that night, and she gave me my cake. And our relationship is healed because of this program and because I get to be an example to her. And out of all my children, I have 5 drug-addicted children, and all the rest of them are in a program but that one. And see, she's God's now. I get to allow her to be God's kid. And all I get to do is be a wonderful, good example to her. And I never give up hope. Never give up hope that God will work in her life to show her that there's a way to live where she doesn't have to drink and she doesn't have to use drugs. Anyway, I'm getting lost. I can't. Oh, okay. So she came to that birthday party, and can't you tell me where I am, somebody? Oh, I got out. I'm in the care unit. That's right. Oh, good. The care unit said they could get us sober, but in order to stay sober, we had to come to Alcoholics Anonymous, and we had to work a program. We had to get a sponsor. The next week, I went back to that Lark Ellen meeting, and I met a sponsor. I met a lady, and a man gave me a little piece of paper with the name Daisy on it, and I was scared to call her, real scared to call her. But I decided I wanted to be sober, and I called her up, and she told me I could meet her at a meeting called Stepping Stones in Covina. And I met her over at that meeting, and she said that she would be my sponsor if I would do two things. If I would agree to go to that step study, and if I would call her before I drank. I'm sure glad that I did both of those things, especially the step study. I went to that step study in Covina for 7 years, and now I go to one in Pasadena. And what I find in step studies, I find people that are committed to sobriety. I find people that want to be sober. If you don't belong to a step study, I highly encourage you to go to one. And if you don't have a sponsor, I highly encourage you to get one. Because this lady, she loved me unconditionally. She offered me help. She offered me hope. And she just loved me. You know, she died a couple of years ago. And I always told her, I want to grow up and I want to be just exactly like you are. And when she died a couple of years ago, I went down to the hospital and she said, you know, Billy, I can't make any more 12-step calls. And I said, oh, yes, you can. Because whenever I go out to share, I'm going to share the recovery that you gave me. That's really what I hope to do today, to share that recovery, because that's why I'm here, and I know that's why you're here. And this lady was a real stepper. She believed really in the steps. She said that I drank because of fear, anger, and guilt. If I wanted to get the promises of this program, the freedom and the growth and the happiness, that I was going to have to work those steps. And right away, she had me coming on step 1. She had me writing, why did I think I was an alcoholic, and why was my life unmanageable? You know, I knew why I was an alcoholic. She told me that step 1 was the surrender step. Step 1 was the defeated step. Step 1 was the step that when I just was sick and tired of living that way, and I didn't want to live that way anymore, and I would have the courage to not drink, that it took the courage to not drink, and that I didn't have any more excuses and no more rewards. See, I want to give myself, I would be good for a little while, and then I'd give myself a reward. I didn't have any more excuses and no more rewards. She said that if I had one little excuse lurking in the back of my mind, see, I have a Harvard attorney up here that tells me just one more time, just one more drink, I'll quit tomorrow, on and on and on and on. But she said, I don't have one more excuse. If I had one little excuse lurking in the back of my mind, I would drink again. And for me to drink again is nothing but death or insanity. And that my life didn't have any balance. My higher power, my Papa, that's where I get my balance. That's the one that relieves me from the insanity. And you know how? It's just a real simple thing, but it's not a real easy thing. And the simple thing is just to give up the struggle. Give up the struggle? You know, it's so easy. See, where there's a hurricane, there's this big hurricane whirling around. Where this quiet place is right in the middle of it. And it's just, if we just give up the struggle and trust the Papa, trust the higher power, then it works. But I had a terrible time trusting my higher power. Told you that I cursed God, completely cursed God. But I kept on going to this step study that she told me about. The step study was a recovery house for women. And those women had lost their health. They lost their hope. They lost their children. They lost their jobs. They lost everything. And as I sat in that step study every Tuesday night, listening to those women and watching those women, It was about 9 months, and it was Bobby, my son's birthday, and I was crazy. I woke up in the morning, and I was just crazy. Why me? Poor me. I just knew, like that young kid knew, if I could just get to that step study, I would be safe and I would be okay. And I got to that step study, and I sat down on the chair, and I remember getting to that step study. I remember concentrating my foot on the gas pedal because I knew if I could just get by those liquor stores and get a drink, it would get rid of that terrible pain down in here. I got into that step study, and I sat on the chair, and the women in that meeting, they listened to me, and they loved me. And they said, Billie, if you just don't drink one day at a time, your life will get better. And my life did get better. And my little lady, she taught me about death. She taught me that I had to let his spirit go. That it's a physical law of our universe, that energy never dies, and that he's just up there. He wrote a poem before he died, and the poem was, I am who I am. And I had that put on his gravestone because, you see, I believe he is. And I believe he's probably up there watching us, and I'll see him again someday. And so I sat in that step study, and I kept watching those ladies. And there was a young woman by the name of Cindy, and Cindy had been through that house, a 90-day program 2 times, and Cindy could not stay sober. And every time I went into the meeting, she had the most helpless, hopeless, lost look on her face that you have ever seen. And one night I went into the meeting, and her hand would be up every time because she couldn't even get 30 days. And one night I went into the meeting, and the lights were on her face. And I said to her, Cindy, what's happened to you? And she said, I don't know, but I haven't smiled in so long that my face hurts. And you know what? That's the miracle that we all get to be part of. That's the miracle that we get to be part of, and it's real exciting. And I saw Cindy down in Pomona about a year ago, and she still got the lights on. She still got this deal. And it's exciting to watch people grow and to be there with them. And I continue to watch those women. Something was relieving them of their alcoholism. Something was relieving me of my alcoholism. Something was getting their lives back together, their jobs back together. Everything was coming back together. And as I watched them, I knew that there had to be some kind of a higher power. And today I know there's no difference in the pains and the joys and the tears, in all of those things that we have. I know there is no difference. I know a lady who says, if you want to see the face of God, just look around. And I just love that, because that's how I found my God. And now my little lady, she's telling me that I got to work that 4th step. Real hard for me to work that 4th step. I'm a perfectionist. I want to write everything out just perfect. And I kept procrastinating. She was really smart. She got this little tablet. It was about this big. And she had me just write the good stuff and the bad stuff, she said. She helped me with the good stuff. I didn't know much good about me, but she helped me. And she used to tell me that some of my defects of character were going to turn into assets. Today I believe that, but I didn't know it. She told me just to turn the page and never look back. And I kept turning the page, and I wrote for 5 or 6 months. Sometimes I'd drive around and have to put a little note down there, and I'd just turn the page, and just turn the page, and just turn the page. And finally, after about 6 months, I took it down. I was real scared, real ashamed, real embarrassed, and I handed it to her. And she said, oh no, you got to read it to me. And so I read it to her, and she shared some of her stuff. And afterwards she said to me, do you believe that God can forgive you for all these things? And I said, yeah, I believe that. And she said, well, then you never get to talk about it again. She said, we alcoholics, we like to pick at our sores and go on and on and on about it. And it just brings on the guilt. She said, you never talk about it again. You never write about it again. It's gone and you're free. Imagine being free from all that stuff for all those years. And then she said, anytime I talk to her about it, she'd say, oh no, that's gone. You can't talk to me about that. And about that time I heard Clancy talking. He was talking about the women from Main Street who don't get sober. They don't get sober because of the guilt and because women are supposed to be Madonnas. And I I knew that I was free then, just totally free. And, on my 6th and 7th step, I go to that step study, and I've been going there now for 10 years, and what happens is I continue to learn more about me and more about living life. And so the thing that thing is, we read a paragraph, we do the traditions, and then we do the steps, and the thing it talks about is humility. And it talks about humility all the time in 6 and 7. One of the things it says is the first move towards humility is recognizing my character defects. You know what? When I came here, I didn't have any character defects. And I have so many today. And our mind, it only has 2 emotions in our mind, fear and love. Those are the only emotions that are there in every one of my character defects. You only have one character defect, and that is fear. Behind fear comes every single one of my character defects. Behind fear comes all of the rage, all of the guilt, all of the resentments, all the inferiority, all the superiority. All of my character defects all start and come behind fear. And on the other side is love. And behind love comes all of the wonderful, beautiful principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. All of the willingness, the beauty, the joy, the honesty, all of those wonderful principles that we have here in Alcoholics Anonymous. They come behind love. And see, fear is just the inability. You're afraid to love. So how do I get out of the fear and into the love? It's real easy for me to tell the women I sponsor how to do this. It's getting a little better with me doing it. But how I do that is how do I get out of the fear and into the love? Because see, myself, I can only have one emotion in here at one time. So how do I get out of that? Well, the best thing I do is I tell my babies, and what I try to do is go out and do another loving thing. For fun and for free, as Chuck C. and everybody here this weekend's been talking about. Go out and do something for Alcoholics Anonymous. Go out and give your gift out. And get out of that fear and into that love. Get into the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. When I did my 8th step, it was making amends, making the list to make my amends. The best amends I made for me is staying sober these 10 years. And I guess when I made that list is the first time I started taking responsibility for my life. I never wanted to be responsible for me, and I didn't want to be responsible for anything I did. If it turned out good, then I'd take the credit. But if it was bad, it was your fault or his fault or his fault or whatever. And now I'm finding out, like so many people talked about here from this podium this weekend, that happiness is a total inside job. See, it's like, if only there was peace on earth. If only I didn't have to go to work. If only Jim or Joe or whatever his name is would come back and make Billy happy. If only I were skinnier. If only I were younger. If only I were prettier. If only I had a better job. All of those things. And I'm finding out more and more that none of those things matter. That the happiness is the inside job. Some of the amends that I made were, first of all, to my husband, that husband that I blamed for everything. He continued on his drinking. I left him and took the kids and I left him, but he continued on his drinking. And his drinking got worse and worse and worse, and I got sober, and I went to him, and I made an amend to him about what my part was, and he couldn't hear me. He was drinking. It was a young man, still in his late 40s, and he got the esophageal varices, and he went and had this bypass operation in the hospital. And one night, I was sharing from the podium, and I looked up, and he was standing in the back of the room, and he was sober. And I got to give him an amend, a public amend. And he never drank again, but his cirrhosis of the liver was irreversible. When he died, he didn't even have enough left upstairs to tie his shoe or to take care of himself. Alcohol had robbed him of every single thing. Everything. And the husband that was the alcoholic that took the antabuse, I told you, I didn't know how to do relationships. We didn't know how to do relationships. Our relationship was like passing in the night. We were married for 13 years and we were separated. And he had this bypass, and he went on the table. Only 1% die of that angioplasty surgery. And he went on the table and he never made it off the table. He died on the table with that. And I had gotten a new sponsor because my sponsor died, and my sponsor had me writing an inventory on what my part was. All the men in my life, starting with way back with my father, she had writing what my part was. And I had written this long inventory and shoved it under the bed. And so when Bob died, I went with his kids down to the funeral house, and I arranged for his funeral. And then I went home that night and I got out that long inventory, and I wrote an amends letter to Bob about what my part was. And today I still feel sorry. We both wanted to have that relationship, that intimate, close relationship, but we didn't know how. We absolutely did not know how to do that. So I wrote all of my part, and I went down early the next morning before anybody got there. And I sat before the casket and I read that amends letter to him. And then I folded it up and I put it there over his heart. And you know what? Alcoholics Anonymous got me free one more time. I got to be free from these amends. My last amend is absolutely awesome because it's with my daughter Cindy. Cindy was hit by a car when she was 17, bilateral cerebral contusion, brainstem damage, fractured femur. And she was in a coma for 2 months. She was flown home by United Airlines from Portland, Oregon, and we thought she would be a vegetable. She was in intensive care, sitting there in intensive care for so long. Finally, one day, a phone call came, and the nurse had put the phone up to her mouth, and she said, "Mom, come and help me." I ran to the hospital. I didn't even have my shoes on. I ran to the hospital. Everything had to be reprogrammed. How to walk, how to talk, how to eat. Everything had to be reprogrammed. She had lost her memory from all of the past. She lost her taste and lost her smell, but she was going to be okay. And now it's 10 years later. Cindy's been through her drugs and her alcohols. And Cindy's 3 years sober. At the end of this month, Larry and I are going to go give Cindy and Jimmy their 3-year birthday cake. And I'm so proud of her. She sponsors young women, and she's just a beautiful, beautiful young lady. She was doing her 4th step, and she called me up. Larry was sitting over the bed, and she said, Mom, I got to talk to you. I just have a lot of feelings. I don't have any memories much. The feelings are that you never wanted me. You hated me. You never loved me. You always spanked me worse than the rest of the kids. You always slapped me on the head. You always rejected me. You never wanted me. And I sat there and I took a big, deep breath. And I tell you, I must have turned it off. Did I turn it off? Is it okay? Wow. So I sat there on the bed and I took a big, deep breath. And I said, Cindy, that's the truth. I didn't love you. I didn't want you. I rejected you and I spanked you. I hated myself for those feelings, and I shoved them down, and I never faced them. Until right now. And I didn't love you. You were my 4th child. I was 20 years old. I was 8 months pregnant with you, and your father walked out and left me. Totally disappeared. And I didn't want you. But I want you to know that I love you with my whole heart now, and I'm so proud of you, Cindy. And Cindy hung up. And I called my sponsor real fast. And my sponsor said that I validated her pain, that I allowed her to go through her pain so that she could get on the other side to some kind of joy and to some kind of happiness. A few weeks and it went by, And I didn't hear from Cindy, and suddenly she called and said she was coming. I was so nervous and I was so scared, and finally the day arrived and she got there and she took me in the bathroom. And she said, you know, Mom, you made your ninth step on me by telling me the truth. And I want to make a ninth step to you by telling you what a rotten little kid I was. But the best part of that is that I don't have to try to get your love anymore. I know you love me. And we have the greatest healed relationship right now. Last year at Mother's Day, I got to share at Laughlin. And my children had been in such chaos. They had been fighting and screaming for such violent stuff that I wouldn't even talk from this podium from, that they hadn't even spoken for 2 years. But now the 3 of them are in this program. They were sitting in the front row. All of them were sitting there united in the front row. I couldn't talk about how wonderful it was. But you know, from all that chaos and drama and struggle, we come to healed relationships in this family. We come to the joy of sobriety. We come to a family that gets to be united, and it's absolutely wonderful. My son Danny, a heroin addict, 15 years, a bad heroin addict. I did everything. He was my only son. He was my only boy left. I wanted to fix him. I wanted to save him. I bailed him out of jail. I bought him cars. I did everything to try to make him okay. I gave him so much money that and he took drugs with a lot of it, see. And finally he spent a year in the county jail, and it wasn't even 6 months he was out, and he had 6 felony counts against him. And the call came, Mom, this time I'm going to go to San Quentin. You got to help me. Only this time I had gone to Al-Anon. I had a committed meeting for 1 year that I stayed in Al-Anon. And those ladies and those people in Al-Anon, they taught me how to give him tough love. They taught me how to say, okay, God, he's your kid and he's my kid. You love him and I love him, and I can't take care of him. You got to take care of him. So I had to say to Danny, I'm not your source, Danny. And Danny didn't go to San Quentin. He went to a place called Crossroads up in Eureka, California. And there he spent 9 months. And he's a little conner, that Danny is, just like a lot of us are. He spent 9 months and he became one of the counselors. And he came home to Covina. And finally he got home a couple of years later to Covina, and I'm living with him, and I'm 6 years sober. Didn't get a program. Didn't go to any steps. Didn't have a sponsor. We all know what happens to you then. It wasn't very long, but he had the needle back in his arm, not only in his arm, but in his wife's arm. And I'm living there walking around in my denial, my ya-ya land, and he's nodding out. And it's a trip, you know, but it wasn't very long at all until he knew what it was to be free. And he decided that they'd go up to Bullhead City up there and cold turkey kicked it. They went up to Bullhead City, and in 8 days they cold turkey kicked it. And he came back to the house, and he went right by the house to the connection. That's how cunning and powerful and baffling this disease is and can be. It wasn't very long until he went back up there again. And this time, 8 days, he cold turkey kicked it again. And this time he found old Joe in a brand new little Alano club. He found old Joe, sober 35 years out of the swamps of Alabama. And old Joe made him write his 4th step when he was 23 days sober. And Danny in January is going to have 3 years, clean he calls it, because he goes to Narcotics Anonymous now. And he said, you know, Mom, I can't just deal with this God thing, but I can turn my will and my life over to love. And you know what? God is love. And then Gloria, my next daughter, she went through that house that meant so much to my sobriety. She went through that house almost 5 years ago. Her deal was cocaine. Cocaine and alcohol, back and forth. She used to say, Mom, I want to go to your Tuesday night meeting. And I'd go over there on Tuesday night and I'd bang on the door and she'd be hiding behind the drapes Wouldn't come out. She wouldn't come out until she lost her kid, her job, her apartment, her car, everything. Then I took her to stepping stones, that house. And now she's got 5 years, and I'm so proud of her, just so proud of her. Because we get to live in all that joy now. I don't mean to stand here and tell you that everything is joyful, because, we have our down times too. But we have tools to use now. We have steps to use. We have you to use. And it's just marvelous. My job, 8 years ago in my job, my sales, I do medical sales, and my sales were minus $4,000. And the bottom line is what your sales is over last year. I heard a tape that said, show up and go with the flow. Show up? I didn't used to like to go to places where they wouldn't smile at me, places where they wouldn't buy my product. And I started showing up, and that meant turn every knob and just walk in and trust my higher power. Trust my Papa, just walk in and trust him. And I started doing that, and it said make 12-step calls on my customers. How do I make 12-step calls on my customers? Give my customers love and service. How can I help you? What can I do for you? I just received my 8th Achievers Award. 8 years in a row of more than $100,000 increase. How Larry had dinner the other night. And 2 years ago, I got the Gold Cup, the highest award American Scientific gives anyone. And I didn't get that Gold Cup. There's no way that drunk lady could walk down the aisle and get that Gold Cup. Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous got that Gold Cup. Larry and I were buying a house. And that's real exciting. We got this little 1926 built-in house, and we gutted it. Larry's doing new plumbing, and new electric, and new everything in this house. It's real exciting for us. And a couple months ago, when it was trying to go through escrow, the phone rang early in the morning. And this lady says, Billy, start, please. And Larry went, He handed me over the phone, and she said, Billy, start, please. And see, I know I've been learning in the program for these 10 years. And when somebody attacks me, just to come down and be real calm. So I was real nice to this lady. Real nice to her. And I got her calmed down. We made an appointment for me to go and see her the next morning. So I was real anxious to get there the next morning because I wanted to see what this witch looked like. So I walked in there, and I looked, and she didn't really look like a big witch or anything. And I sat down, and I looked around, and over on her desk was a little framed picture of a girl. And I read that thing, and it talked about a young girl, 14 years old, being in a car accident, being in a coma. And I looked over at her, and I said, is that your daughter? She said, yeah. And I said, how long ago was that? She said, that was 14 years ago. And I said, and what happened to your daughter? Oh, she said, she's still in the coma. She's still exactly the same. And last week, she said, we lost the insurance. We took care of my daughter, so we're trying to fight it in the Supreme Court. And then she shared a little bit, and I shared a little bit, and she told me that she wouldn't have admitted it at that time. But at that time, she, her husband, and her daughter would have been better off had her daughter died. And I got to share back with her some of my stuff, that I wouldn't trade places with her for anything. But the lesson that I got from all that is, again, one more time, those judgments. You know, what I'd really like to do and what I'd like to see coming up in my sobriety is to try to get rid of the comparisons and get rid of as many judgments as I can because they keep on coming up. You know, we have teachers. He was talking about the teachers, and I talk about lessons. I do all things for lessons. One of my biggest lessons has been for forgiveness. I had this pain in my heart, and it just stayed there. And it just twisted. And my little lady, my sponsor, told me that in order to get rid of that pain, I was going to have to forgive the murderer of my child. How do you forgive the murderer of your son? I wrestled with it, and I went on and on and on. How was I going to forgive the murderer? I didn't know. What was I going to do? How was I going to do it? Finally, it came to me. I don't know how. Probably somebody told me. When I was driving around out there in a blackout, I didn't kill somebody. God, I could have so many times. And when I decided that maybe the murderer of Bobby was drug affected or alcoholic, and then I could forgive him, I forgave that murderer, and you know what happened when I forgave him? That pain went away down in my heart. And I never, ever got it again. I never got that pain again. I find out that forgiveness is the key to my serenity. Forgiveness is the key to the peace and serenity that I looked for all my life. And how I do forgiveness, you know what? Forgiveness is just a decision. But I gotta sometimes make that decision. It's a decision to let the hurt go. It's a decision to let the pain go. Sometimes I have to make that decision over and over and over again. Our big book tells us that forgiveness is letting go of the judgments. Here comes those judgments again. Our big book tells us it's to see the other man as spiritually sick. I know that I've gotten a lot of forgiveness, a lot of freedom from forgiveness. I guess my biggest lesson is to trust my higher power, to learn to trust my Papa. And on my 10th step, what I do is I write 2 simple little things, because I do writings these days to try to find out who I am and where I am. I write what happened during the day, what good thing happened during the day, and what bad thing happened to the day. And what the 10th step does for me, the best thing that the 10th step does for me, it tells me that I don't have to be perfect. God, I wanted to be perfect my whole entire life. And make prompt amends tells me that I don't have to be perfect anymore. On my 11th step, I probably wouldn't be here without that 11th step, without that Papa, without that talking to him every day and trusting him every day. I was up in Lancaster doing my medical sales, because I come up here every 2 weeks, or up there to Lancaster every 2 weeks, and I spend the night. And I got the flu real bad one night. I was real sick, and I couldn't get out of the hotel. And I thought, oh my God, I'm all alone. And I was about 3 years sober, and I realized that I wasn't alone. And I had my Papa. That was the first time that I realized I had a source, that I had my best friend. I had somebody to be in my corner for me. And when I remember, boy, is he there. On my 12th step, my little lady told me to go to meetings to give, not to get. And said, I have nothing to give. And she would say, stand in the corner and give him your smile. Just give him your smile. And since then, I always try to go to meetings to give and not to get. Helped me so much last night when I heard Tom say that we all need to go and give our stories. It really helped me a lot, because I know that whenever I face my fear, whenever I walk straight head on into my fear, whenever I trust my higher power, whenever I come and share my story from the heart, that it always comes out good. And then I get to the other side, and man, I tell you, on the other side is so much joy. So much joy. One of the greatest lessons that I've had to learn is love. Love is the most powerful force there is, I believe, in this universe. And all I ever wanted was somebody to love me. God, I went through all those men. And I came here and I had to ask for forgiveness for accepting sex when all I ever wanted was somebody to love me. And the deal was, my little lady, I always close with this deal. My little lady, one day she taught me about receiving love. One day somebody came up and said, boy, that's a nice new pair of shoes you have on. And I went, these old things. And she said, you know what? You just slapped that lady's gift right in the face. You just slapped it right in the face. Why don't you learn to say thank you? So from then I started saying thank you. And it's grown over these 10 years, so that now I've learned to receive your love. As I say, all I ever wanted was somebody to love me. There were a lot of people that loved me in my life. But the deal was, I was so unworthy.
that I wasn't worthy enough to receive your love. And it's an incredible journey to start receiving the love. In these rooms, I find so much love and laughter. So much love and laughter. But I haven't always been able to receive it. And I hope that whoever is here today, all of you here today, will open yourself up just a little more to be able to receive that love. It's incredible. It's just wonderful. Wonderful to be able to give that gift. I think that all people have a basic humanistic need. They want to give their gift back to society. And what is your gift? What is all of your gift? We here in Alcoholics Anonymous, we have the best gift in the whole world. Because all we have to do is put our hand out to another drunk and help another drunk. It's a wonderful, wonderful gift we have. And I feel so fortunate and so blessed to be up here and to be able to share with all of you and to share my love with all of you and to be able to receive your love. I guess I heard somebody else, a lot of people say that this is the greatest, Alcoholics Anonymous is the greatest event of the century. And it is. All of those 12-step programs out there transforming thousands of lives. And we get to be part of it. It's exciting and it's wonderful. And I'm grateful. And God bless you all and thank you.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Sobercast is ad-free, and we'd like your help in order to keep it that way. So if you'd like to help us be self-supporting by pledging $1 or $2 a month, visit Sobercast.com and look for the donate links. Thank you very much.